Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning coffee time. How's everything looking and sounding this morning? I believe we've arrived at July the 12th, at least here on the west coast of the United States. So that's the convention we've agreed to. As amongst, in addition to others. So this is the year 2020 here in the United States as well. But they passed 2020 a long time ago in Buddhist countries. And I can't remember what the Buddhist year in Thailand is, but it's 25 or 2600 something. Wait, I think it's still in the 2500s. So and then I've seen different calendars and markings for other countries, other Buddhist countries. So calendars are conventions. And somehow in the West, we're still living under the Roman calendar. The long reach of Roman culture. So let's see, today is Sunday, so that means we have another talk coming from Ajahn Sona this afternoon, premiering at 1 p.m. So if you have time, go and click the reminder and see if you can carve out some time for that live-like experience of Ajahn latest talk kind of premiering. With so many things on offer and so many options these days, I think there might be a utility there. Like if you're anything like me, you have a shelf full of books, a Kindle full of ebooks, and a list of things that you're hoping to get to sometime, someday. So actually making a commitment or having a nudge to show up at an appointed time. It's true. The talk will be there on YouTube for who knows how long as YouTube exists and as long as Ajahn and the stewards decide not to take it down. But who knows how much time we have. Okay, well, let's see what else. Also, did a little test with Ajahn and the stewards up at Birkin the other day, and it looks good for having Ajahn as a special guest tomorrow. So Monday morning coffee time will be special if the tech gods bless us and everything goes okay. Hopefully we'll have both video and audio, but if Ajahn's audio isn't working, video isn't working, then we'll just fall back to some audio. And so you might listen to the talk today and give some serious consideration to good questions. You could ask one question, or I don't know, maybe even share one thing. Our time is rather brief, so it might be good to think ahead, take some notes, and compose a succinct and careful question. And just for those who might be confused, questions are those things that actually end with a question mark. And it can be okay to share your appreciation or give some brief feedback or something, but I think we'll prioritize questions, and Ajahn will not be able to see the questions, so I'll be I'll be playing host and kind of giving my attention to the chat, and then displaying those on the screen and reading them out to Ajahn so he can reply to them. Before we got going this morning, I was trying to catch up on a lot of the various email and feedback that I've received from people, and a few long ones even. And I do appreciate hearing from people. It's useful to know how this fits into your life, what meaning you find in it, and how useful it is. Just it's a grand experiment, in my opinion, and a nice, maybe time appropriate offering for this time that we're in right now, where we can't move about as freely as formerly we could. So I appreciate that. I thank people for that, and I can sometimes give a brief thank you or response, but sometimes I can't keep up. But I do appreciate that. So for those sending me emails and stuff like that, thank you very much. It's really nice to hear your gratitude, your appreciation, what you find useful, and also your own kind of reflections that don't somehow fit into the chat. So, all right. Well, I'm going to make a concerted effort today to try to keep up with the chat. Just one brief thing that kind of comes to mind reading through one of the emails, or some discussion about language, and in particular, and someone sent me an email about the discussion around sanya and sankhara. And my approach to Dhamma practice and using the suttas as a jumping off point for nourishing my own Dhamma practice and nourishing contemplation is a little bit maybe looser than others, and not quite as literal. There's a whole rich tradition of commentary and studying the Dhammas and trying to get very precise. And sometimes the Buddha offers his own definitions and precision. But, my reading of the suttas is, this was a real human being wandering around, engaging with people and using language in the way that we typically use language, which isn't always literal, and has a bit of play, and is tuned to the conversation, the time, the place. And, we find ourselves in a very different time, in a very different place, and even a very different culture. We still are facing the very same challenges as all human societies, including South Asia in the time of the Buddha. But what we make of these words sometimes, there's only so much precision that we can get with all those kind of limitations. And I think there's room for creativity, contemplation, I think we have to rely on our own clear-minded and sincere experience of life. And if we are sincerely engaged in Dhamma practice and trying to understand this experience of life and the challenge of living with goodness, and trying to understand these kind of central truths that the Buddha points to, I think language takes us so far, and then our own experience and sincere application of effort and contemplation takes us the rest of the way. And there's kind of a balance, I think, that needs to be struck in developing a relationship with the teachings that are there in the Sutta Pitaka. If one's overly wed on turning to commentaries and the word of another as completely authoritative, there is some sort of liability. You are kind of trusting in someone's interpretation. And I would say in general, the commentaries, especially the traditional commentaries, they're aiming at precision, even technical precision. And sometimes that puts them at odds with what seems to be a more sensible kind of reading, even if there's a little room for ambiguity there in the teaching itself as it sits in the sutta. So, and what kind of kicked off this contemplation for me this morning was just this effort to try to discern delineations between something as fine as sanya and sankhara, or perception and volitional formations. And it's not always easy to make such clear-cut, unimpeachable divisions when we're talking about facets of the mind. And I'm having some technical difficulties here. My my bell has a mind of its own. Um, so anyways, that's just a little bit of a thought. I would say we need to strike this kind of balance between looking to authorities and studying and trying to make sense of things as best as we can, but we shouldn't completely abandon this our own sincere and creative engagement with this very human endeavor of trying to understand the Dhamma in our life, and in using these models that we find in the Dhamma teachings in particular, I think that's the safest approach, and it takes us where we need to go if we're practicing the whole of the path. So, all right. Well, let me turn to the chat here and see what you all have on your minds this morning. Good morning, Eleanor. Do you have a mentor to whom you can go and ask a question, talk, ask for support, etc.? Yeah, I have many mentors. There's a rich culture of maintaining relationships with our preceptor, our teachers, but also my monastery is kind of stitched into a great family of monasteries built by disciples of Ajahn, and you have a lot of brothers in the holy life, peers, as well as teachers, and I have many teachers and people that I can turn to ask questions and talk on Dhamma. So we don't always get to spend all that much time together since I've been living here in the Northwest in a small hermitage. Um, and in general, living outside of Thailand, there's less opportunity for the level of contact that you have in Thailand with teachers. But I do, I do, I do have mentors and people I very much look to and can turn to. And that's a blessing. Good morning, Scott. Morning chants, homage to the Sangha. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. Could you reflect on they give such honor for the Sangha? Yeah, this phrase that comes up in our morning chanting, it kind of comes out of this itipiso recollection or epitaph or saying that comes up many places in the suttas where people are reflecting on the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And this is one of the qualities of the Sangha, is they give occasion. Sometimes a more literal reference to this quality is they're an incomparable field of merit. So this is a rendering that I think was crafted in England when they were making the English version of our chanting. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. I think in the suttas it comes across a little bit more as like an incomparable field of merit. And I think there's a few dimensions that might to this. I mean, one, if I take my own kind of limited knowledge of the time of the Buddha, my sense is that in his day and age and in Indian culture at the time is widely recognized the value of doing good deeds and having something that one bows down to, something that one holds sacred and that can make offerings to. As a culture in a society sort of rich in practicing making offerings to gods, to shrines, to various teachers and religious practitioners, and there was the notion of some sort of hierarchy. It's better to give to some things rather than other things. And I think this statement the Buddha's making is kind of an affirmation that, as opposed to other things that one might make gifts to, supporting the Sangha that is practicing well, rightly, correctly, keeping the kind of standards of ethical conduct and monastic practice that the Buddha laid down for them. So living and practicing in a very pure way, especially maybe compared to the way others were living. The Buddha is affirming that the monks and nuns that are disciples of his are very worthy of support, and that the support of food, medicines, housing, and shelter, robes, food, shelter, and medicines is very efficacious. You're giving to a good cause. You're supporting good people that are very sincerely and purely sort of engaged in trying to deepen and develop Buddha Dhamma, and to bring that into the world and to carry it forward. So, and the Sangha in particular is like a huge part of the vehicle that opens up the opportunity for the Dhamma to exist in the world. We can sometimes think of this or image it in a very maybe casual way, like the Buddha is enlightened, and then he makes this decision to try to share his enlightenment experience and the Dhamma with other beings. And he spent 45 years kind of wandering around, but there's some parts to the story early on that make it relatively clear that he wasn't merely relying on chance and happenstance for the Dhamma just to spread to those who had little dust in their eyes, or those who had the fortunate karmic conditions to meet the Buddha or one of his enlightened disciples or members of the Sangha. Early on, as people are being transformed by the Dhamma and his teaching of the Dhamma, he actually encourages them to scatter and go forth in the world in different directions. So this is kind of the rolling of the wheel of Dhamma forward into the world, and in some sense, the Sangha is the vehicle, and it always has been the vehicle that spreads and sustains and maintains the Dhamma sort of in the world, so that it is open and available for people to be inspired by, to draw near, to pick up and practice, and to realize the fruits and the benefits of this Dhamma and this discipline that the Buddha teaches. So, on one level, I would say this statement, it might have a very straightforward kind of meaning to it, like being a field of merit. It's a good field. It's a place where it's worth going out and planting seeds, making offerings in particular, and worthy of support. But also it's one that gives great fruit because of the opportunity that it creates. And if we think about it now here, 2,600 years after the Buddha walked the earth, it's incredible. I sometimes think about a modern example too. Lumpur Cha was born in a time and a place in a Buddhist culture that is deeply steeped in the practice of generosity and supporting monastic level practice and experience, and even not bound up with a particular monastery. The forest monks just wandered around, and people didn't necessarily, the communities they came into contact with and for their daily alms didn't necessarily know or even have much interaction with some of these monks. So there's a very kind of broad faith held in the society that you might not know the person's name, you might not know who they're about, you might not even know how good or bad they are at applying themselves to their practice. But the forest monks in particular live such ascetic lives that many people had a sincere faith that these are people worth supporting. They don't ask for much, and they seem to have given up even a lot of the comforts of a more settled monastic life to go off and put forth great effort to develop their Dhamma practice. And because he was born in a time and a place where the society had something of that relationship towards supporting the Sangha, he was able to get sufficient support for his years of wandering, and then establish a monastery and successfully guide many men and women and monks and nuns to deepen their own practice. And look what it's done. Look how it's carried forth and touched the life of literally millions of people. So to me, that's the best any angel investor can hope for. Food and robes, some very simple dwellings, and look at the returns. So, and we believe that those returns accrue to the giver. And this is something the Buddha talks about. So, generosity, there's a hierarchy of generosity. And one shouldn't be dissuaded sometimes by maybe giving for not the best of reasons, but there is a hierarchy in the practice of generosity, and something that factors in there is the worthiness of the recipient. So, and when one is pure in one's relationship in offering and giving, and they're giving to a very worthy cause or a very worthy situation, it has a magnifying effect and the goodness. So being effective in one's generosity and giving, of course, it makes you feel happy. You can feel happy about trying to help out, but if it doesn't bear much fruit, the happiness and the joy could be somewhat sort of limited. But like when you help out and you give and you see great results come from that, then of course it magnifies the sense of well-being, joy, and happiness, and having supported that or played a part in that. So, good morning, Sumana. I find value in comparing translations. Live teachings I listened to a few years back with Bhikkhu Bodhi made me so aware of the choices there. I concur. I think it's really nice to read various works in different translations. Again, another plug for Sutta Central. It's one of the features of Sutta Central that I really enjoy. It makes it so easy to look up a particular sutta and then see what other translations might exist, and then go and read through other translations. It wasn't all that many years ago we were lucky to have any translations of some suttas or some parts of the Sutta Pitaka. And now for a lot of the more important suttas, we have at least a couple, and sometimes even a dozen or more translations. So, and that can kind of get the contemplative juices kind of flowing, just to kind of look at the various words, especially for some of the more important terms and technical terms. Good morning, Marilyn. Even as I asked that question about Sanya and sunk hard, Sankhara, somehow you got a D in there. I asked myself, does it matter? Really? This is getting annoying. No, it does matter. Like, we should ask those questions. What is the difference between sanya and sankhara? And that's part of the whole value of having these models is to sort of tease out delineations so that we can examine. It's like, dissecting something. We kind of learn if by sort of categorizing things and analyzing things in these ways. Duck plus bee. What do you get when you add a duck to a bee? Does generosity sometimes feel like plain old work? I heard that generosity always feels good, but sometimes it just feels like work and even aversive. Is that normal? Well, I have to imagine there's a whole spectrum of how generosity feels. So I hope it doesn't always feel like plain old work. Uh, there is a great potential in cultivating how it is that we practice selfless giving and generosity. And, similar to um, this sense that there's a hierarchy or a purity that one can bring to one's giving. I would say if it feels like work, then there's certainly more work that one can do in sort of looking at how it is that one holds it and how one engages in it. And I would encourage you to figure out how to make it feel less like work and more like joy, because giving has many benefits, but one of the chief ones is like learning how to connect with uh, the selfless, sharing, joyous feeling that can kind of come in giving to others, to giving, to putting others' well-being and concerns or needs beyond one's own selfish obsessions and concerns. Hmm. I don't know how far back this is, but I'm getting something from Stan saying turn the volume up a bit. So it'll be interesting to hear what other people think. If anything, the levels look higher on my end today, but the mic's in a slightly different position. So if I move too much, maybe the volume's dropping. So okay, let's see. Eleanor, what will happen once we no longer have desires? Desires motivate us to do things. So if we no longer have any, what will we do? Where will we find the inspiration to do things? Well, I invite you to strive to reach that place, and then you can report back to me. But I would say we have to be careful in how it is that we conceive of what the Buddha's talking about here. He's pointing to sort of the trouble with desire. And there is language that talks about the eradication of desire, but he's talking really about uh, a wrong relationship to desire and desire structures. So, and I talk about it in the language of investment. We're wrongly invested in our desires, we think like our relationship and our level of investment in what the Buddha calls tanha, which my favorite way to translate right now is thirsting, is we think we think these things are more important than they really are, or that they're going to bring more satisfaction than they really can, and that needs to be investigated. And that is at the center of what it is that's supporting our experiences of dukkha. So, and when we understand that in a profound and transformative sort of way, our relationship to desire and desire structures changes. Desires don't go away, but tanha can be eradicated and go away. So this kind of wrong relationship, this wrong-headed investment in the objects of our desires, that's transformed. So there are still motivations, and there still is even desire, but this is where the value of technical language helps us out here. Tanha is desire that always leads to dukkha, or always leads to suffering. And so the language that is talking about and pointing to the eradication of tanha is pointing specifically to that. So those desires and our relationship to them, that is what needs to be overcome. And through a successful cultivation of the path, we come to a place where that ceases. So, and with the cessation of that, there is peace, there is freedom. And if we can attain that state before the life faculty ends, then there's still an opportunity to do good things in the world, and there'll be plenty of things that one will be motivated by, opportunities that lay in front of one, the chance to give in various ways, to do in various ways, to help in various ways. One still might have preferences, desires, motivations, inspirations, but one will relate to all of those features of consciousness in a very different way, having understood and eradicated tanha, desire that leads to dukkha. I'm going to leave it at that for today, friends. It's nice to have this time to share with you, and appreciate everybody showing up, especially those who come every day. It creates a nice little community and touchstone for people to begin their day and to encourage each other and arouse a sense of sati around some of these dhammas again and again. Each and every day is important. So be well, and don't forget 1 o'clock. If you haven't done so, go over and set a reminder on Ajahn Sona's channel. There's something where you can, I'm not sure how it works, but at a certain time you can say, remind me. And then if you're around a computer, I guess you'll get reminded. And listen to it with the mind of appreciation and also, I guess, sensitive or mindful to any thing that you might want to ask or share with Ajahn tomorrow. And we'll see how many people we can fit in to that opportunity if it all works out well tomorrow. So, all right. Be well and have a nice Sunday. If you're here on the west coast of America, and I guess it's maybe Sunday night other places. It must be Monday, but doing math live on the internet is probably not something I should do. So, all right. Be well, friends. We'll see you tomorrow morning.